I've been using flush cut bits just like this right here for the last 30 years or more. I've heard really good things about compression bits. I've never used one. So in this episode, we're going to go over to Greene Street Joinery, also the home of Today's Craftsmen. That's the channel that I share with Jeff. And Jeff will tell us all about these bits and show us what they're used for.
Welcome to Greene Street Joinery. I'm Jeff Krug. I'm the owner of Greene Street Joinery, and this is the shop. So we're a 5,000 square foot shop in Keansburg, New Jersey, and right here is where we shoot all of the Today's Craftsmen videos, so we hope you go check that out. I can show you a little bit around the shop. So have a bench area over here. This is where our laser is. We have some boring machines back here. You know, workhorses are the edge bander. We have a Strebig 5x10 vertical panel saw. Ganymed construction boring machine. The forklift is a huge asset in the shop. Milling machines are over there, joiner and planer, and cabinet, saw, and spray booth over here. But let's show you these router bits. Have our first bit in the router here, and I'm holding one here in my hand. So these are both compression bits. So a compression bit has flutes sort of opposed going towards the center. The idea is that you are preventing tear out. You're pushing the material towards the center, so you're not going to get all this fuzz. And these are bearing bits, so flush trim bits. And we'll show you what the difference is between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch. So these are both 1/4 inch shank, but this has a 1/4 inch cutting diameter. This has a 1/2 inch cutting diameter, and they're both a 1 inch length of cut. We have a piece here. So John took this over to the bandsaw and cut this profile into it, and we'll use a piece of 5/8 plywood, and we'll trim this into this piece using the bearing. So we'll do half of it with the 1/4 inch and the other half with the 1/2 inch to show you the difference. So as a general rule of thumb, they say that you should remove no more than half the diameter of the router bit. So this is a 1/4 inch diameter bit. You shouldn't be taking off any more than 1/8 of an inch of material. You can see here where, you know, we have probably a 1/2 inch of material there. I certainly don't follow this rule, but it's sort of like a best practice. Half the diameter, so you could theoretically remove a 1/4 inch with this 1/2 inch bit. I have my depth set, and I put a little center mark on this piece, so we'll take this 1/4 inch bit halfway. Hopefully we can get a good shot of it trimming. So this is a brand new bit. I mean, it flew through that, no problem. We have nice flush trim, no burning, and a smooth cut. So clearly you can take a little bit more than half the diameter, at least when it's new. Have our 1/2 inch bit in there, so we'll see how it fares here. Maybe a little bit smoother because we have a larger bearing, and this larger bearing is sort of riding over this rough sawn bandsaw cut a little smoother. I don't know if you can see through the shavings on the camera. It's like static charge. So there's our two compression bits, our 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. And the main difference being you can remove more material with the 1/2 inch, and if you have a rough template, you're going to get a smoother cut. It's probably really hard to see on the camera, but I can actually see the difference in these cuts. I can see these undulations in the 1/4 inch. Stops right there, and then this 1/2 inch one is much smoother. So that's the compression bit, gives you a clean cut on the top and bottom. And now we can show you the difference between a downcut flush trim bit and an upcut flush trim bit. And John prepared two samples here of veneer on plywood. So we'll trim both and show you, how it affects the cut, being an upcut or a downcut.
Well, Jeff is changing the router bit. I want to tell you a little bit about Today's Craftsmen. I met Jeff through Instagram a few years ago, and I was immediately impressed with his skill level and his attention to detail and his ability to communicate. We started Today's Craftsmen just a little more than a year ago, and that channel really focuses on the cabinet making business. So it's a great source to learn about suppliers, finishing techniques, new hardware, tools, and we post videos every Saturday morning at 8:30. So I hope that we'll see you there.
Have the downcut loaded up into the router here. So the downcut is going to be pushing the material down when you're in this orientation. So that's going to be good for trimming veneer because it's going to keep a clean edge. We'll show you what happens when you use an upcut, but let's trim this piece, see how it looks. So you can see, even on this cross grain, nice crisp edges, very clean, no tear out. But we can show you what happens when you use an upcut bit in this situation.
I'm rolling.
Have our cut in the router here, so you can imagine this is pulling up as it cuts. You wouldn't really use it in a situation like this where you're trimming veneer, but let's say you were doing some template cutting and you needed this. That's great. Give that a second. As I was saying before the compressor turned on, if you had a situation like this where this was your template and this was your workpiece and you needed a clean face on this, the bottom side of this, that's when you would use an upcut because it's going to pull the fibers up and the center of this material is going to be supporting that and you won't get your tear out. But let's see what happens when you use it on this veneer. I'll show you the wrong way to use it. So you can see here, this is another thing it does, is it pulls all of the dust and chips up into the router and totally obscures the bit. I couldn't see anything I was doing. And you can see here, there's some of the contact adhesive stuck here, but you can see all of this chip out and fur that the upcut created. On your long grain, you know, you're not going to have as much of an issue. We do have a little bit of like a flake here, but on this cross grain, it's definitely not going to give you as clean of a cut as a down cut. So we did want to show you one more bit. This bit is not from Bits and Bits, but they may carry these for all I know. This is a square bearing bit. So this is also a flush trim bit, but instead of a bearing, it has this little, I think it's Delrin square, and it is just sort of seated over the top of a ball bearing. But when you would use this is if you had edge banded or veneered the edge of something and then a perpendicular face and you needed to trim that. Well, the bearing on this bit, it's going to dig in or potentially burn or leave marks on this finished surface, but this black plastic will not. So you use this up against a finished surface when you're trimming an adjacent surface. We use these for laminate. This happens to be a beveled bit, so a no-file bit they may call it. It gives you a little bit of a bevel and it helps break that edge on a piece of high-pressure laminate. So that's a look at a couple spiral flush trim bits from Bits and Bits. Hopefully that was helpful. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we hope that you'll come check out Today's Craftsmen if you haven't already. We do put out a video every Saturday morning at 8:30, so we hope to see you over there.
Well, that was a quick look at a few of these bits, and I hope that you understand what they do a little bit better now. I know that I do. It was also an introduction to the channel, Today's Craftsmen, and Jeff. I do hope that you'll join us over there every Saturday morning. And I want to thank Bits and Bits for sending me these router bits. This wasn't a sponsored video in that they paid me, but they did send me the bits, and I'll find links to them and have them down in the description below. The nice thing about teaming up with Jeff and starting this new channel is it makes larger projects, or at least the potential for taking on larger projects, possible. I've talked with Jeff, and if we can get something to happen, maybe even buying a small home one day and renovating it and doing the built-ins and the kitchens and things like that. That's kind of the dream. That's what we have out there. But for me to take on something like that by myself is kind of out of the question. But teaming up with somebody, especially as knowledgeable as Jeff, makes that much easier, and also sharing the load of someone building, someone filming, and you know, that kind of thing. So anyway, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. If you'd like to learn more about woodworking or build your own furniture, visit my website at johnpeters.com for professional woodworking plans and step-by-step video tutorials. While you're there, check out my original artwork for sale or shop my prints and merchandise.